Can you see the screen, everybody?
Yes.
So often as children, we maybe have more fears, or at least more vivid fears, more imaginative fears. What were you afraid of as a child?
Maybe some monsters and some really scary animals from the fairy tale. So just darkness. I think the first one, just darkness. That's about me.
Yes, many often children, as children, we are afraid of the dark. You mentioned the scary animals or from the fairy tales?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. How about you two? Were you afraid of the dark?
When I was young,
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I afraid of the ghost and the trucks. The big car. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's probably
yeah, because when I was young, I small, and when the truck is so big.
Yeah, right. It's probably a sensible fear to have. Big trucks. Okay. Andreas?
I didn't like the dark either, but if I remember rightly, I didn't anticipate any monsters also.
What was it?
It was more the usual pupils' fear of unexpected exams or being questioned by the teacher.
Right. Yes.
And one time I vividly remember feared, or I anticipated even to die because I had touched a poisonous plant, and I was said it is a poison plant.
Who told you? Did you just thought? Did someone tell you that?
It was I think my parents had told me, and I had touched it, and so I had lunch also. I ate something, and I hadn't washed my hands. So later on, I remembered I didn't wash my hands, so I expected to die, and I said goodbye to my brothers and sisters, but nothing happened.
Right. Yes, just as well. I remember as a child, I was scared of wolves, even though I don't think I'd ever seen a real one. But I think it was the wolves from the fairy tales and the stories and the books that I had. They were always these, exaggerated animals with huge teeth dripping with saliva or something. So that made me scared. I remember having some nightmares about these big wolves. Okay. What does fear do to us? Here is I found this diagram just of perhaps some of the physical effects of fear, which you may have experienced one or all of them at some time in your life. So we can talk about this, or we can also talk about maybe the mental effects. What is the effect of fear on us?
I think it's different when we are happy, just we feel happiness, or when we feel fear. So that's, of course, we feel changes in our organism, like skin, just like, and then just something is going on inside of us. That's kind of a gut feeling, just that something could happen. And so we are really like, I don't know, we are scared. We are suspended. And I liked the video that you sent about fear and no imagination. That was the connection. And writer, she explained that how our fears are connected with our imagination. So just how we imagine what would happen just if just we are fear. So we have this fear and then what would happen. And so we have different stories. And so that was interesting story that she provided with this whale ship. And there were 3 options and they chosen the longest way and they just really survived, but it was really not a good way. It was the worst option for them. So they were afraid of cannibals, but there was an easiest way to get and to be survived. But then just during the whole, they didn't have such experience about how starvation could be that it's worse, and it's really disaster just when you don't have food for a day, for a month, I don't know, just for a week, and and some people they became cannibals on this ship, and they just they were afraid of cannibals, but some of them just became cannibals because the starvation was really awful. And so I'm just reading a book about starvation, and during the period of 1920s in Russia, it was really it was a catastrophe, and I just understood that starvation is worse than the war. When people they don't have any food, they
kill more people,
yes, all mice, all dogs and cats are eaten. So and people are waiting for the spring to eat fresh grass or just tears and something like that. It's really difficult to imagine that they try to survive. Of course, they became cannibals and they can eat each other, and so just because starvation is really worse than the war. When you fight, just you can die or not, but it's kind of it's another fear. But I think it's worse. So just so sometimes, of course, we have such just stories and imagination what would happen. Maybe just we had such experience, or maybe just we saw this experience maybe on the TV, or just our friends just shared with us this experience, and then we could be afraid of it, even if we didn't have an experience. Not so much to say. So sorry. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Yeah, it was. I did enjoy the video. I don't know if I didn't give you guys very much time to watch it before.
Yeah, it was interesting. Very, very nice video.
Yes. Okay, can I bring one of you two, Andreas or Muk? What would you add to that?
I will add some information about the fear that affect the body, like the picture you showed. It when we feel fear, the bodies and our mental change, because we have to run or to survive in some intense situation. So body receives that information and try to make more energy for escape, like the heartbeat faster, the muscle contract stronger, and the system that are not useful at that time, like the digestive, the stomach or the eating system it's not useful at that time and could be dysfunction to decrease the energy requirement and increase the energy supply for other systems that more important for running or for escaping. Yes. So we will see that our heart beat faster and we have more power to do something like in my country they will say that when the fire is the fire is happen, we have a power to lift the refrigerator and run, something like that.
Right. We get right. Do you know the name for this kind of response? Sometimes called
sympathetic.
Oh, maybe there's a kind of day-to-day layman term that we use, which is the fight or flight response. And it's like you say, you get ready to either run or to fight the danger.
To fight, yes.
But a lot of people have said this in the modern lives of most of us. This is not always very useful. Maybe you want to go on stage and deliver a presentation, and suddenly your heart is beating faster. And it might not help you in that situation. How about you, Andreas? Do you remember experiencing these physical response?
Yeah, I also think it depends on the intensity of the fear. There might be this positive effect. You mentioned the stage frightening. If I have to do a presentation, fear enhances my ability to concentrate and to focus on what I'm going to do. But if there's a certain threshold of fear, it might happen that my mind goes blank and I can't remember anything. So this is exactly the opposite effect, that fear blocks me or blocks people, especially if there's irrational fear, irrational imaginations, which I feel I can't cope with. So I think everybody has to prepare some strategies to cope with fear. Maybe if we have this example of the presentation or the stage fright, I have the experience that the positive effect, and I can recall the positive effect and use it for next time. Maybe also in other situations when it's not a presentation, but don't know, something else that frightens me.
So you can use this effect. I remember, it reminds me of somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody who used to had to go on stage a lot, and he would always say you'd always get this kind of nervous tension before a fear, but he would, in his mind, he would say, okay, I'm getting excited. And just his perception of, he would have the same physical sensations in his body, but the way he perceived them made such a big difference from somebody else who said that they thought this was stage fright. So they said, I can't get over this stage fright. I'm not made to be a great performer.
Maybe just I told you before that it's really difficult to be on the stage, than rather to be on the same level when people are around you. When you're just on the same level, it's easier to be confident and to be free and to be brave. But when you're on the stage, you're low, you're up, you're in a higher position, and so sometimes it's really scary. And I try to understand why I'm so scared just to be on the stage, and I try to be relaxed and to drink water before that. But anyway, when I just try to hold a speech, I feel that my voice is separately than me. And I asked people who had more experience, just like for 10 years, just holding a speech on the stage, and they told me that it's impossible to be afraid of, to be
unafraid.
To be not to be afraid of. Just it's kind of like it's a constant feeling that you always feel. You always tensions. Just like feel you're always afraid of holding a speech. It's kind of like a constant feeling. So you cannot be like relaxed and to be like in a normal life. So that they told me that it's impossible, and so but I couldn't check it because I just gave up this club, just like speaking club.
Okay. Okay, so let me come to the next one then. Here, is this the next here? This is perhaps more logical. Of how do you cope with your fears? There's different ways we often talk about them. Do you face your fears, as they suggest here, or overcome your fears? As she said in the video, sometimes in society, especially in, I don't know, the Western society, we say you need to conquer your fears, but maybe there's another way to cope or to manage your fears. So in your experience, how do you cope with your fears?
I just said because it depends on the fear. Just for example, for me, like skydiving or just diving with the sharks or just kind of like extreme sport, bungee jumping, I would never try it.
So just avoid that. Listen to your fear.
Yes. For me, it's like not just like to overcome this fear. I can not do it. I just because I know a lot of experiences. Again, yes, just I can imagine what could happen, and for me, it's really okay, another step, and just it's not for me. But just like talking to people, just to give it a presentation because it's my work, it's my job, and so I have to do it. Yes, I try to find ways how to be confident, just like some methods. And of course, for me, it's really important just to share my methods and maybe just to give something from other people. And of course, it's very important. So it depends. When you fear something, you try to be an example, especially for kids. And I try to show my son, just how it's very important to be brave and just to hold the speech, to ask people when you, for example, when you lost. Of course, you have to ask people how to find a way. So I think we teach our kids how to be. How to live in this society, and we should be an example.
Okay, thank you. How about either of you?
I agree with Natalia about it depends on the situation, and if that fear can extend our ability to be good at something, I will. I think I have to conquer with this fear by preparing well for that situation and practice until I feel more confident to do something that I cannot done or I haven't done before to improve my ability or to get the good feedback from what I have done. But if that fear from the adventurous experience or something that I don't interested in, I agree that I will avoid that. Something like something that I'm not interested, like a skateboard or the drive too fast, something like that.
Okay, yes. So maybe the fear is in that case worth listening to, worth heeding your fear. It's maybe keeping you alive. How about you, Andreas?
I agree that it depends on the kind of fear and what we are afraid of. There's this abstract fear of illness, for example. In my example, there are colleagues suffering from cancer, and of course it's difficult to do anything against it from my point of view, except of trying to live as healthy as possible. But this is, I think that's more an abstract fear, what might happen, or something like accidents also. And then there's this concrete fear. I can name one in my case. It's the fear of the height.
Yes.
If I walk in the mountains, and especially if there is a ridge where on no side is or there's a steep slope on every side, and there's nothing to touch. That's not so easy for me, but I think one way is to expose myself to this fear, not in extreme situations, but to name it, to recognize it, and then to increase the challenges. I wouldn't go to the Mount Everest, start with Mount Everest, but do slower mountains and face it, and then improve it from trip to trip.
Right, yes, small steps and build up your confidence. Yes, take small steps. I think that's definitely good advice. If you try to do too much and then something happens, you will just reinforce your fear, and it will be perhaps stronger than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. What can we learn? This is probably related to what we've been talking about. But have you learned anything from your fears? Can our fears teach us about ourselves? Can we learn and grow from them? Anybody?
I just can provide another example. There is a very famous movie and a book. I read a book and I watched the movie, The Reader. Maybe you know that's about a German movie. It's about the time that was interesting story. But the main point is that the main hero, Hannah, was sent to jail, and she would be released if she confessed to the jail that she cannot read and write. She's illiterate. Yeah, and her fear was to be illiterate in front of people and just to confess that she's illiterate. So her fear, being illiterate and not to be, was stronger than to be free. And he was sent for 20 years. I'm not sure, I don't remember. And it was really, I cannot understand. Her fear was so strong, and he could be released if she confessed. That was. But
could she read?
After that, in jail, she was started to read, and it was interesting story. I really recommend you a movie. Kate Winslet she's the main hero.
It's called The Reader.
Reader, yeah, The Reader. There is a name of the movie.
Okay, so it's a book and a movie.
Yeah, the book and the movie, The Reader. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good example that how fear could really change our life completely. That maybe just, yeah, it's about me. Just of course, we all have fears, and so sometimes, yes, I just really could be a bit nervous or just feel this fear before my presentation or just at work. So I just feel course, it's really our necessity. Like, we cannot be always relaxed. It's kind of like our protection also. Yes, just I wouldn't go to the bungee jumping because I try to protect myself. I know that what could happen. I think
that's quite a rational fear.
Yes, rational fear, and maybe just to survive. Maybe I would jump if it will be the way to survive, only one way to survive, of course. So we have really unlimited resources, not just limited, but sometimes we could be impressed how much force and resources we have in some extraordinary cases. So
yes,
first,
it's like the video, like the story she talked about, and the ship, and that was the basis for the book Moby Dick, wasn't it, in the video?
Yeah. Well, just really fantastic story. And then she told about imaginations and why we are fear, because we know, we tried. Our brain is imagine. Yes, we just have a lot of imaginations, thanks to our childhood fairy tales. Yes, it's like monsters or cannibals and something like that. And so we have a lot of experience, maybe just to share it with other people, and other people just shared this experience. And of course, we watched movies and read books, and so of course it influences. Yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So sometimes, of course, it's not easy to overcome, and sometimes I will try to avoid the situation. Don't like to be afraid of it. And so, but sometimes, yes, we have to go further to make this step and go. That's about me.
Okay, I think she also pointed on this abstract and concrete fear, because she mentioned or she said we should care more about the climate change, but it's abstract, but more threatening in the end than bungee jumping or something like that. Concrete fear.
Right. Yes. And she compares that to the cannibals, the threat of being eaten alive, which is this kind of horrible, vivid picture that we can make in our minds, and perhaps less easy to imagine is the kind of slow, horrible death by starvation, which Natalia mentioned. But even having said that, the second one is more real. Maybe something slow that's hard to imagine, but is more real scientifically, like climate change. It's more of a threat than a plane crash or something kind of shocking. Yes. Oh, whoops, sorry, I meant to do that. And how about you, Muk? Have you learned any lesson from your fear?
What I have learned from fears is sometimes I think the feeling of fear of some situation is affect me more than that situation itself. The fear that we imagine forehead, and we think it could be this, it could be that, and make me feel nervous sometimes before that thing happen. It make me feel terrible and unready to do things. But when it actually happen, it's not that bad, and sometimes it's turned to be good after we have preparing it well. So when I feel nervous or I feel fear of something that I have to do, I will tell myself that it's not that bad, it's okay. And although although I might fail from doing something, I will get the experience and sometimes the feedback to do it better. And when talking to myself like this, it make me feel more comfortable to do things and to prepare it further and further to prevent the failure.
Yeah, great. Yes, often the fear is worse than the actual object of our fear, the thing that we are afraid of.
Yeah.
It can also, sometimes it can get bigger and bigger. It can grow in our minds. It reminds me of the Harry Potter story. I don't know if you've read this, where they picture what is he most afraid of, and it is fear itself that he fears the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are mostly afraid of the worst case, but the worst case only rarely happens.
Yeah.
Yes, true. And often it's things of the unknown. We often fear something that we haven't done before.
Yes.
This unknown threat. Okay, let me come back. Then I just skipped one before. So in that case, we've probably covered some of this, but sometimes fear is often thought of as a very negative thing. But we've touched on the fact that obviously it's not always a bad thing. How does fear help us?
Nice picture. Nice photo.
Yes.
Yeah, you're a really fantastic searcher that you presented some many photos that yeah, and also in this video she mentioned that while we just had so many imaginations and so many pictures, because from childhood we had vivid information. The information is more vivid and vivid imaginations. And so maybe just why our brain is working so fast. And so we had a lot of pictures. And sometimes, yes, I absolutely agree that fear is often worse than the object of that fear. And I think it's, of course, it's not a bad thing, as I mentioned, that it could protect us from really stupid things and not serious things, and just we can avoid it and just we can think about that, what could happen, and we wouldn't do it. So we would stop ourselves. So we have a brain, we have a logic, we can think and we can decide what to do. We have a choice to do or not to do, to be or not to be. So that's our choice. And of course, it's not bad thing. I think that's so we can avoid a lot of negative situations, and that's about
it's
me.
true that we do have a rational thinking, but doesn't fear usually undercut or the rational mind? Fear is kind of linked directly to other parts of the brain, which so your heartbeat will start to go faster, and all the physical effects that we mentioned will happen before your brain can think, hey, you don't need to be scared of this. This isn't a big threat. That's why different parts of the brain, the kind of primal, I forget the part of the brain that it is, perhaps it's the, look, maybe you can help me out. Which part of the brain, I forget.
Which part of the brain
deals with
you mean the sympathetic response?
Perhaps that's part of it, yes. So we have I forget. Maybe it's a sympathetic response, yes. And any response that we get, sometimes it's talked about as this, we have the parts of the brain which devolved first, sometimes called the lizard brain. And then the mammal, which is quick emotions. And only then do we have this kind of thinking brain, which developed last. And
yes, in human and in mammal, we have the executive part that make us make a good decision or making a plan compared with other animals. And the executive part is on the frontal part, the last part in the front of the brain. which will develop in human. Yeah.
But if we're in a dangerous situation, such as maybe we see something that we perceive to be a big animal or a truck, then suddenly it's like you will send messages before your brain has any chance to think logically about the situation. And sometimes that can save your life if you're driving and you suddenly get a very, you swerve almost before you've thought, before you even register that you've seen something, you might make a quick movement or something like that.
But the involuntary movement, the movement that you don't expect to do.
Yes.
I cannot remember which part.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
I should have researched that. But yes, so, okay. Let's see. Coming down. Okay, so the last one here, I've kind of, well, the first one is saved to last. How about speaking English? Do you get sweaty palms or does your heart beat faster? I'm sure not any longer, but do you have any experience of being afraid to speak English and how have you dealt with that?
When I was in high school, I have to commute to school by the Sky Train, and there are many foreigners working there. I try to avoid group of foreigners or the travelers because I don't want to. I try not to bring to contact their eyes because I know that the traveler usually asks for the direction. Which I cannot give them the information. and I think that's the most important thing that I have is the listening skill. I cannot listen and get what they want, and if they're right, I can answer that, but I have problem with the listening in different accents and understand and respond it quickly after. So I try to avoid it. But after I try practicing listening, I feel more confident and I'm don't scared of the foreigners anymore. Even I cannot speak grammar correct, but I think I can help them if they want.
Yes, great to hear. And final quick comment from either of you. Sorry that we're running out of time again.
I'm totally not afraid of speaking English, but I have a really brief example of my friend. She was always afraid of speaking English, and my American friend, he presented her. He's Russian, and he was laughing, and he told me, "You're speaking better English than I'm speaking Russian." That was really a good example, and she stopped being afraid of speaking English.
Oh, great! That's a great way to break the ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes I would try that with students as well. Show them